Hi guys, Jay here from borntoproduce.com and welcome to lesson 2 of the brand new Psytrance tutorial in Cubase, where we make a track from start to finish. We're just about to bring in the badass bassline, but I'm just going to quickly do some housekeeping on this kick drum, so I'm just going to rename it from kick 13 to kick, shift and enter to rename the actual part as well, and I'm just going to do it red because I always have my drums red because I'm extremely anal that way. I'm a bit of a moniker where I have to have everything named and coloured correctly. Okay, so let's get on with it. Now the bass line, I just want to explain to you, as it has to be extremely hard hitting in Psytrance, and it has a particular kind of sound which I tried to make in Retrolog and was getting sort of close, but it just wasn't quite punchy enough, so I ended up using a sample. So again, if you've purchased the course, go to your work files and bring in Bass 39. If you're in the actual Club Tools 1 pack, it will be in the synth shots, as I'm showing here. But if you haven't got the pack and you've downloaded the work files, then it'll be called Bass 39. Okay, I'll just audition a few so you can hear a couple we've got. Okay, so I want 39 side bass. Again, I'm going to create a sampler track just in case, it's easy to change this later on if we want to. And same as the kick, we're going to trigger it via MIDI, so just Alt for the draw tool, 2 bars. Again, it's on C. And in a typical Psytrance bass, you're generally looking at 2 offbeat notes or 16th notes, and I'm going to do 16th notes, which means it's a very fast, hard-hitting bass line, which we all love, don't we? Right. So actually, before I start programming this in, I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to change my quantize setting to 16, zoom in a little bit with H, come to C3, and now I've got 16th notes rather than quarter notes. And again, we can just duplicate the 4 so we don't have to do all of them. And this is what it sounds like. Okay, which sounds pretty good. Obviously we need to sort out the EQ, the volume and the sidechaining to really transform this into a Psytrance bass. But it's a really nice sample to begin with, which is very, very important. Okay, what we need to do is actually do a bit of volume management here. Just going to go into my mixer, which is F3, and you can see we're peaking here on the stereo out, which is also the master bus. It's just called stereo out in Cubase. And what we need to do is start bringing stuff down now, because when we start bringing in 10, 20, 30 other things, they're all going to sum together and our peak is going to get even worse and we'll start distorting. So let's bring down the kick quite a bit and the bass. Now we're at a much better level if you have a look on the stereo out. Let's just get that to loop. In fact, we can duplicate that, highlight it, Control D, highlight the whole thing, and Alt P draws a loop around it. I know there already is one, but pretend there isn't like that. It's quite a handy little shortcut. I use it all the time now. You highlight the section you're working on, or the MIDI part, whatever, or the audio part, of course. Alt P draws a loop around it and sets it in motion. So yeah, I really love that shortcut. So let's get the level of the kick right. So you see we're about -10, -9, which is perfect. And the overall level is about -8, which is great. Basically what we're doing is we're creating headroom, because I know there's going to be a lot of extra instruments added throughout the course of the next 20 or 25 lessons. And again, in the bass sample, you can come in and shorten. You can mess around with the sample as much as you want. Make it shorter, make it longer. You can play it on different pitches. But I think that sounds pretty good as it is. But it is getting in the way of the kick a little bit, and that is the trouble when you've got the kick playing at the same time as the bass. There's a couple of things you can do. You can either EQ out a little space in the bass for the kick. So what I'm going to show you is when the kick is playing, you can see the kick is around about 59 Hertz or so. So what you could do is come into the bass and just EQ out. Just going to use number 2 as it's a peak EQ, and you could just come to 59 Hz and EQ out that a little bit. That would make a little bit of space for your kick drum to come through. Otherwise the kick and the bass are using the same frequency and therefore they're clashing together. Or you can use the sidechain option, which ducks the volume of the bass every time the kick plays. And that is used a lot in Psytrance and a lot of other genres as well, and it also creates a kind of ducking rhythm, and it just sounds pretty damn awesome. And we like that, don't we? So let's do that. If you're on Elements and you don't have sidechain, which you will not have on your compressor, there's another way of doing it. Well, there's 2 other ways of doing this. You can add a tremolo effect. I'm pretty sure you'll have that in Elements. So you can duck, put it on the bass channel obviously, and duck it. Just click on sync, change it to quarter notes, and you can hear that. Put the spatial down. You can hear that ducking. So that's one way of doing it. You can also, I'm just going to get rid of that, but you can also come into the MIDI itself, come to velocity, and these are the velocities, which is basically, if I was to have played this in by my keyboard, it's how hard I've hit the keys and therefore how loud it is. So the first kick on every 4, you can just bring the volume down, or you can draw in volume automation. Just make this a little bit more obvious. So you can hear the bass is a lot lower on that first note out of every 4. And therefore that kick is coming through really nicely. Just undo all of that. Yeah, and the third way, as I just mentioned, is you can draw in automation. We will be doing automation later on in the lesson, but you would basically just come down here and draw in a dip in the volume every 1 out of 4 beats. All that's obviously quite manual, so the way I'm going to show you now is if you're an artist or pro, we can use sidechaining. So basically we need to add a compressor to the bass channel, dynamics, compressor, switch on the sidechain, and then we, in Cubase 10, we click the down arrow and we tell it where. Actually, before I do this, I should explain for anyone that's new, compression and sidechain compression. So in very, very layman's terms, a compressor just turns things down. So once it goes over a certain threshold, like here, which you can set with this knob here, the volume gets reduced of whatever the element is. But with the sidechain pressed, it ignores the threshold and waits for an external source to come into the compressor, which then triggers it. And in this case, it will be the kick. So in other words, every time the kick is received by the compressor, the bass is reduced in volume. So what we need to do is just tell the sidechain where to look. So we do add sidechain input, and the only one available obviously is kick, because that's the only other channel we've got active at the moment. So let's just see what's happening. And you can see there's a little bit of gain reduction there, but let's make this a lot more obvious. So basically it's a way of dipping, getting that dipping rhythm and also letting the kick through so it doesn't clash with the bass. You basically want a quick attack, and the release is sort of open for discussion. You probably have it fairly quick, but you just adjust it basically as to what sounds good. It depends what tempo you're working at. The threshold, the more you have this down here, the more effect you're going to get. And ratio as well, maybe 3:1, something like that. What we also need to do is make a gap in the bass, the same as the kick. So we're going to have the last 4 16th notes out as well to make way for the snare, which is coming in here. And the compression was kind of jumping up when it wasn't receiving the kick, so now that's okay. Let's just go back into the settings and we can be a bit more extreme. So the release is how long it takes the compressor to recover from the action after the kick has finished playing. So you basically want quite a short release so the dipping effect is more apparent. So you can hear a nice dipping effect in the bass. Let's just solo that, bypass that so you can hear the difference. So the bass line is flat, and with yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. Now I don't think we need to EQ this bass. I don't think so. Let's just have another quick listen. Now, it sounds pretty good to me. What I might do later on is make a bass layer to go over the top of it. Maybe a fifth up or something like that. But we'll do that in a later lesson, I think. I think in the next lesson we'll start building these snares, and then we'll sort of layer a load together to make it a huge, big, fat snare. So I'll see you then. Bye bye.